classroom safe and inclusive for all students?
How do you make the classroom safe and inclusive for all your students?
How would you make your classroom safe and inclusive for all students?
We do simple things every day. We start class with good times. Students share little simple stories of their day. It makes a big difference in building a bridge when you get to have those non-academic moments, when you have those moments of a student just getting to be who they are. And then we move on with the rest of our day. We get to bond as people before we bond as teacher-student.
Usually I just let the student know that from day one, they can talk to me about everything and even to each other. So like there's no making fun of each other, you know, even when they have made a mistake, then we just talk about it and we want to make sure that it's okay. Everything is okay, we just have an open communication.
Well, mostly when you're in my room, you talk about math and you talk about only math, and math is kind of equally offensive to everyone. In general, I don't really tolerate any negativity, even if it's like a personal, oh, I'm stupid because I did this something wrong in my quiz. I really don't tolerate any kind of negativity.
And I always try to use language that is inclusive and encourage other students to use that language.
I also teach them that it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to be yourself, and the way that I do that is I am always myself. Or I come from a background that is different. You know, I'm first generation Filipino American, and my family is straight from the Philippines, and we came over and we were the first ones here, and I know what that kind of shift in culture is like and how hard it is to adapt. So I try to share my personal stories with them. I ask them about their day, I ask them about choices that they've made and why they made them, and just trying to cultivate that discussion.
I love giving these mom talks, and those mom talks are all about acknowledgement and recognizing people for their inner self, not necessarily their outer self.
Most people who know me know that I am not only comfortable, but also intent about like having discussions about things that might be a little bit more controversial, that and oftentimes have to do with oppression or exclusivity as opposed to inclusivity. I don't mind if students are uncomfortable because they're just unfamiliar with something. I'm okay with that because I think that they should talk about it, but if it makes a student feel like they're in a hostile environment, that's where I draw the line. I won't talk about that. But I think it's important, and I try and do it through the pieces that we read in class, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, the debates we have, and just overall daily discussions.
How would you respond to a derogatory joke such as "that's so gay"?
How would you respond to a derogatory joke or comment such as "that's so gay"?
Gay means happy. Gay should not be used in an offensive way.
Thankfully, it's pretty obvious that I am of the LGBT community, so I don't really face a lot of that. I don't really hear a lot of "that's gay" or whatever. I think mostly because they are scared of me. I'm not sure.
So sometimes I try and remember that these are just students, and sometimes they don't recognize like the power of their words. And so, especially if I have a relationship with a student, I go, hey, you know that that's something that is very demeaning, whether it's racist or in that case homophobic, and they'll go, no, and they try to explain. I was like, and so I use it as an opportunity to explain how it is in fact demeaning.
You tell the student that that's not what we say. In a grad school classroom with a bunch of AP students, it's a really quick redirection of, hey, we don't say that, and it tends to move on. In other environments, I've had a harder time fighting that battle, but if you consistently draw the line as this is a fight I'm willing to fight, students learn that it is not worth it to keep saying those inappropriate things. But I think you have to choose, that's the kind of thing you have to choose to engage about.
I wouldn't want to make it this massive thing in the moment, just because I think when you draw massive attention to it, it becomes a bigger thing. I would want to come back to it and speak to the person who said it quietly, individually, and I'd probably bring them out in the hall and have a conversation with them in a different moment. I think the problem is when you talk about it in front of a group, like of course it would be shut down, but just by saying that was uncalled for, but I think you wouldn't have power. People would blow you off, yeah, whatever, okay, you got it, yeah, no big deal, whatever. And that's why I feel like, trying to relate it back to somebody like, hey, do you remember that time that X, Y, and Z happened? Do you remember how you felt in that moment? Well, now let's go back to that situation.
And by you using it in a negative, with a negative connotation, you are saying that being gay or being mentally retarded is bad. So some kids, a lot of my students, when I say something like that, they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I said, can you imagine that you were that, whatever, you are gay, or you are mentally handicapped or retarded, and you hear somebody saying that, how that would make you feel, and they just...
How do you incorporate LGBTQ perspectives or representation in your curriculum?
How could you incorporate LGBT perspectives or representation into your curriculum?
I will have, for instance, a journal prompt about using, I've used this one before where I show a video about using That's So Gay, and the students have to respond to it and try to understand how that could be offensive to their peers.
Where you don't want their sexuality to become what defines them. Like what makes Eleanor Roosevelt is not the fact that she's likely gay, it's the fact that she has a political marriage that she then leverages for greater say in the White House and to advocate for African Americans and other disadvantaged groups. So you just paint them as whole people because they are people, and so you just discuss and describe them in the curriculum in a way that doesn't stigmatize or fetishize it. You just address it as part of who they are.
About historically, we really have taken certain people who have not been the norm, and that's true for many different things, and they've been pushed aside. So opening it up to discussion in those moments. The way that I've really spoken about it is through my mom moments. Like I spoke about to like a student of mine and a friend of mine in high school who were both gay, who one committed suicide and one attempted suicide. So I think by bringing personal experiences and talking about them through a mother's perspective versus a teacher perspective has been the easiest way for me to integrate it. I think we definitely need to open up that discussion because I do think that while it's becoming more accepted in our society, we still are not there yet. There's a lot of people who are closed-minded, and I think in incorporating greater discussion and bringing it out more, I mean, I think there has to be a gradual movement towards it. I feel like if you all of a sudden one day go from nothing to everything, then it's often rejected. But I feel like if you slowly integrate it and just, I would like to have greater discussion.
For the spring concert, I am actually programming Cyndi Lauper's True Colors, which was for a very long time kind of the anthem for the LGBTQ community. And I try not to shy away from those issues. Thinking about what it is to be an LGBTQ person in this time, or a brown person in this time, or a woman in this time, and how it's time for us to have a voice. All of you are different, and each one of you can do exactly what you want to do. You should be allowed to.
So nobody's perfect. I would love to be able to handle situations like you're talking about with the joking and that type of thing, be able to really nail that down. Well, it'd be nice if we didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So as the teacher who's obviously gay, when I have an LGBT kid in my class, what tends to happen is they want to tell me their whole life story and act like I'm their counselor, which is sometimes kind of an awkward position for me because I'm not really great at social cues in general, and then when a kid I don't really know is spilling their life to me and I'm supposed to be teaching them math, it puts me in a weird position, particularly in the state of Virginia up until a few years ago, and I think it's still the case. I know they're changing some laws, but you can be fired for being gay in the state of Virginia. So I didn't even have a picture of my wife on my desk, and I don't say that I'm not gay, but I'm not gonna bring it up. Yeah. I'm not gonna be like, hey class, I'm gay. There's no reason to do that. It's not important, shouldn't be important to you, it's not important to me, it's not gonna change the math education you get from me. But I'm trying to be more open to those dialogues because I understand that representation is important, and that the weird teacher, the one that looks funny, it's easy for kids who also are maybe outside of mainstream to talk to or open up to. And even though that's not my place, I'm not a counselor, I'm not part of the GSA or anything like that, it should be something I'm more open to. So that's something I've been working on, honestly.
I can't imagine being in the circumstance of many of my LGBT students where they have to be radically different people at home and at school. Anyone who has a piece of information about them holds the ability to essentially ruin their life as they see it. And that's such a terrifying power to fall in the hands of people who just sit near you in calc. And so I think having those kinds of signs up, taking time to specifically denote contributions by LGBT figures is really important. I think I could just do more.
I would like to feel like I don't have to worry about kids being upset because my classroom is inclusive and parents being upset because my classroom is inclusive. It's disappointing to me. That's what I mean. Everybody can't do that, but I feel like as a cisgender white woman that I have to be able to represent like that. Like I have to use my privilege to be able to be inclusive when there are other people in the building who would probably feel less inclined to do it because they would be accused of forcing their agenda on someone else. Like obviously I don't have an agenda. I just want to be inclusive and I want to let kids know that they're welcome to come to my classroom, and I wish everybody could do that.
You know, I want to be able to, you know, when someone comes to me about concerns or, you know, I want to be able to handle it better and help the students.
Whether we are, you know, black, white, male, female, gay, straight, we are all in this together. And so I think it's just important that we vocalize that as teachers.
Where do you fit into the LGBT community? Where do you fit into the LGBT community?
I'm straight.
All right, cool.
I'm gay.
Same.
I identify as lesbian, and I'm kind of unsure about my gender identity, so somewhere kind of on both spectrums of the community.
I kind of fit in a different way than I had predicted. So I kind of have evolved into a bi-curious kind of state instead of just gay. I find it a little bit able to switch labels and kind of just understand myself before committing myself to something like that.
I am straight.
Okay.
A lot of people identify as queer. They don't base themselves in a certain category of being LGBTQ. So I feel like the idea of being queer in general is a good safe place for people if they're not fully comfortable with where they are, if they are comfortable with just being labeled as queer.
It's an inclusive term for people who are questioning their identity. It gives a name to people who feel like they don't have a name.
Our community is able to take something that used to be so hurtful and turn it into something that we're proud of and use as a word to describe ourselves in a positive light. So I think that's just one of the great things about the queer community, is that we're able to turn the worst things into one of the best things.
Alright. How could teachers and staff better serve LGBT students?
How could teachers and staff better serve LGBTQ students?
Teachers really need to educate themselves about the things that are going on in students' lives, especially things that can affect how their grades come along.
And call out any like unnecessary comments at home, which you know we hear all the time. People like, oh, that's so gay, stuff like that, which is really unnecessary. So calling out stuff like that, or if they see any like kind of discrimination between people, like or like bullying of people.
I have witnessed a little bit of like bullying and harassment around LGBT stuff. Probably mostly at school, just hearing a lot of people using the F slur and things like that.
I was called, you know, the D word, I would say it, in the hallway.
I was pushed and shoved by one student, and he was expelled for calling me dead gay. But I've just been called faggot a couple times, and just like the insults and names and stuff.
Alright, what advice or resources do you recommend for your LGBTQ peers?
Just being able to talk to somebody is something that's needed.
Even though it can be a tough first step to take sometimes, speaking with your counselor at school, I've found has been really helpful. They're there to support you no matter your identity, who you are, any sort of thing like that. So I found that that's been really helpful throughout my high school experience.
Honestly, just don't care about what other people say. It's easier said than done, but honestly, like, to be strong, like, you can be yourself.
Right, thank you.
I mean, I feel like also just being myself,
Definitely.
providing an example for people who don't have one, because I'm both Christian and gay, and it's that intersect of identities that people are sometimes put off by. So it's really important to be vocal in both areas.
Going to Pride events is something that's obviously an easy way to understand a lot of communities around us.
I'd say go to Pride Fests. Pride Fests are a great, open, safe place most of the time for people in this community, and if you can go with family or friends, that's a great place to start.
Create more unity. I think it's like a separation between the two for for many reasons, but at the end of the day, everybody come together, just chill.
Yeah.
Positive stuff.
Yeah.
The vibes, yeah.
The vibes.
Amen. Just be yourself.
Okay.
Does it feel like a safe environment when you walk through the hallways? If not, are there particular areas or parts of the building that are worse? And what do you think could be done, I guess is my question.
It definitely does depend on the particular area and the people that you're around. Because I remember when I used to ride the bus, I would hear homophobic stuff all the time, even though I wasn't even engaging with those people. They were just, at the back and I was in the front. There was never anyone there to say anything. And obviously I didn't want to be the one to say something.
It just depends on where you are and who you're with. Because because you hear like some things like that's okay or like the F word being thrown around.
Which is unfortunate that you have to feel like there's a safe place and a not safe place and that type of thing.
But there are still definitely spaces where it's not as safe as it could be. For the first time I'm not holding my breath. Ever since I exhaled, I believe in